My name is Kyle Hiersche. I am the host, and today we're going to be talking about how avoiding responsibility can hurt founders as well as avoiding accountability, right? So the front end is avoiding the responsibility of actually doing the things, and then the back end is owning the accountability of it not being done or not being done correctly. And I think these two things are something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, including myself. I think any entrepreneur will tell you it's always a daily struggle to take responsibility and accountability, both. So we'll talk a little bit about that here today. So obviously, the responsibility is the upfront part. So you are responsible for everything in your business as the founder of your business, as the business owner, as the entrepreneur. Typically, people would put themselves down as the CEO of their company. So, however you want to put it, whichever position that you fall into, if it's your company, everything is really your responsibility. You are the buck stops with you. So, it's very important for one to not be a delusional founder, thinking that somehow other people are going to be able to do these things that are going to need to get done. When it's just you in the beginning, you're the only person who can do it. Even if you have business partners, you still may be the only person who can or is willing to do it as well. And so you just need to go into business just knowing every single thing that needs to get done right off the bat, I'm going to do and I'm going to need to do. But hopefully you can get more help later, but it's ultimately your responsibility to get it done. Now, even once you're at the point where you hire help and you've built up to that point, then the responsibility is for you to train the people to do it correctly. And then on the back end, the accountability comes in of whether it was not done correctly. Whose fault is it? Well, it's your fault. At the end of the day, it's always our fault. As the entrepreneur, as the business owner, as the CEO, it's our fault. Even if it's something that an employee did, at the end of the day, they are the employee that we hired. We probably interviewed them. We probably trained them. And if not, then, that probably was the problem right there in the first place. And so, ultimately, everything falls on us as the founder and owner of the business. And so you have to take the responsibility up front to make sure you're doing everything correctly. And then you have to take accountability on the back end. If it wasn't done correctly, there's only one person to hold accountable, which is you. And, I think not taking responsibility as an entrepreneur, it goes a little bit hand in hand with procrastinating, because a lot of the times we don't take responsibility of doing the things that we don't want to do. Especially people who are entrepreneurs, we tend to get excited about things, and that's what keeps us going a lot, is the excitement, the possibility, the dream that we're chasing. And when things fall outside of that dream and that excitement, and they fall into these, monotonous categories that are not fun to do, and there's something that just kind of has to be done, paperwork type stuff or whatever, we tend to kind of push that off and procrastinate that. And we tend to try to make it somebody else's responsibility. And at the end of the day, that's part of it, is kind of procrastination or pushing responsibility onto other people. And I think even as myself, from my own experience, a lot of the times it comes from it's something that you're not excited about. Because everything that you're excited about as an entrepreneur, and that's relating to building this dream and, getting things out there to the people and stuff, a lot of the times that's what we're excited about, more of like the sales end and the front end and stuff like that. And we kind of shirk our responsibility of, more of the back end, or again, the monotonous things that you kind of have to do to keep everything going. So we have to take responsibility for that as entrepreneurs, to make sure that, with the good comes the bad, right? We are in an amazing position as entrepreneurs to follow our dreams, a lot of the times to love what we do or be in the industry that we've always wanted to be in. But, this is also, a way to make a living. And so it's work at the end of the day. And so you can't, have the good without the bad. You have to, do the work as well. So make sure to not lose that, responsibility and that obligation to you and your company of doing the things that don't necessarily excite you because they need to get done. And if they don't, there's going to be consequences for you and your company in the future that you're not going to want to go through. So you want to make sure that you don't put off those responsibilities. You know, another kind of avoiding responsibility topic is kind of blaming the market for things. So, again, this is true for me as well. So this is not me, pushing things onto other people, but it's absolutely true for me as well, that sometimes you get frustrated when things aren't going well. Sometimes you blame the market. You even kind of blame your customers, which is really what you're doing when you're blaming the market. You're blaming your customers. They just don't get it, or blaming your competitors, or these are things that are really you avoiding taking responsibility for what you're doing on the front end, and then again avoiding taking accountability for what you've already done. Because if you're already at that point where you're struggling so much that you're complaining about the market or the customers or the competitors or whatever it is, you're not really taking accountability for what you have been doing leading up to this point. Remember, it's almost always a delayed reaction in business, right? The work you're putting in right now is going to show in the coming weeks and months and years. And so you need to take accountability for what you have done in order to get to the point where you're at. And you also need to take responsibility of saying, hey, if this is where we're at, we have to be more responsible about doing X, Y, Z to make sure that we're not looking back a year from now saying the same thing. So don't try to blame the market. Don't try to blame people. Don't try to say, oh, people just don't get it. It's an amazing product or service, but the people just don't understand it. Well, if they don't understand it, it's our job as the entrepreneur to make them understand it, right? Whether that's through marketing, sales, how we're positioning the product, the pricing of the product, the details, whatever it is that's missing, that missing piece of people actually purchasing and using the product or service, we need to figure that out. And it's never the customer's fault, obviously. It's not your competitor's fault. They're doing what they need to be doing. There's only one person that's at fault, which is us as the business owner. And so we need to take responsibility for that and not try to, push that off onto other forces of, the market just doesn't work. Or, a big one is the economy, right? A lot of people are like, well, it's the economy. Nobody has money right now. I mean, the economy is going to go up and the economy is going to go down. It always has. And at the end of the day, running a more stable business or running a business properly, it shouldn't affect it that much. Now, if you're in a certain industry, for example, I owned a live event company when COVID hit. So we went from doing 30 events per month, so an event per day throughout 60 different cities, to doing 0 because everywhere shut down. So that's a little bit different. That's like extenuating circumstances when it came to, COVID. I also owned a nightclub when COVID hit. So obviously we went from being open, to being closed. And so, those type of things may happen, but in the normal ebb and flow of things, there's ups and downs in the economy. People are still going to purchase what they need or want. And you might just have to adjust your pricing or negotiate with vendors or whatever it is. There's a lot of things that we can do that are in our power that we need to take responsibility for and not blame the economy or, any other external factors, and just take responsibility for it and hold yourself accountable as the entrepreneur to know that no matter what happens, you can sit here and play the blame game all day, but it's not actually going to get you anywhere. It's not going to get us closer to being more successful. So, another thing that I think people kind of push off responsibility to is, business partners or investors, right? Now, the whole point of Founding Without Funding, the book, right? Plug. The whole point of the Founding Without Funding book and the course and everything that we do here is to not have to wait on investors. And so, we need to be responsible for everything that we do. That's really the core of it, is for you to be responsible for your business. So whether that means being responsible for funding it yourself from the start, or being responsible for figuring out how to get your customers to fund it, or whatever it is. We need to take responsibility and ownership of our own company, and not say, hey, I want to start a company, but I'm going to wait until somebody invests in it. I'm going to wait until I win the lottery. And then once I win the lottery, I'll have enough money to go start this business, right? So that's what Founding Without Funding is about, is taking it into your own hands and taking responsibility of the fact that you are responsible for launching your dream. And you can do that without outside investments. So that's a big part of this too, making sure that you're not pushing off responsibility onto investors. There's some people that may have, like, for example, you may have a family member that has a lot of money, or a friend that has a lot of money, and you are like, oh, if they only just gave me, $20,000, I could start this business. You're pushing the responsibility onto somebody else, right? Of starting your dream. Like, oh, well, you have so much money. If you could just give me this much, then I could follow my dream. Well, no, you need to follow your dream now. And then once you get it going, then eventually somebody will fund it if it makes sense. But, it's on you to make it make sense and to prove it yourself, which is why Founding Without Funding exists. You can take whatever you have, make it happen, get it going, and then you either scale it up and you don't need an investor, or you've already proven it out and an investor is willing to help you put money in to scale it up. But what we don't do is we don't sit around and wait for an investor or wait for funding to start our business. Another thing to try to not wait on, is different tools and things that you think that you need to start the business. So even if you're saying, hey, I don't need a lot of money, but I do need to buy this and I need these tools and this stuff, well, you need to try to get around that as much as possible. There's a lot of things you think you may need tools to do that you could do on your own, that you can just figure out a way to do it without those tools. So it takes a little bit of ingenuity too, of us looking at problems, and really entrepreneurs are problem solvers. Anybody that tells you different is not an entrepreneur. Anybody that tells you that being a business owner is not being a problem solver has never been a business owner. That is what it is, day in and day out. It's about solving the problems that are in front of you and anticipating the problems you're going to have to solve in the future, and taking responsibility and accountability for the problems that have arisen from what you've done in the past. At the end of the day, whether it's the present problems, the future problems, or the past problems, they're your responsibility, and you have to figure them out. That's the difficult part about being an entrepreneur and being a business owner. But obviously the huge upside is that if you're doing it right, very, very potential large upside to it. So let's talk about, some of the common responsibility traps that founders fall into here. So waiting for external validation, I think, is something that trips a lot of entrepreneurs up. So for example, followers. A lot of entrepreneurs don't even want to tell people about their business or show people their business because they don't have a bunch of followers yet. And, and this, it seems kind of silly to say, but it means everything. And now, this day and age, how many followers does your business have on social media? How many followers do you have on social media, especially if you're the kind of face of the business, right? And so I understand how that can seem like it gets in the way, but a lot of it is just making sure you get out there, because until you get out there, how are you going to have more followers, right? It's like the chicken and the egg. People want to wait to really get behind their business and be confident about it and spread the word to everyone, because they don't have, a lot of followers yet. Well, how are you going to get a lot of followers until you do that? I spoke in the last episode about how having, your friends and family as that core base to follow your business accounts is very important. And it's funny because a lot of people want to go the opposite way. They say, well, I don't want to tell my friends and family to follow my business and to send it to them when I have 0 followers. I want to send it to them and show them that I'm doing things, that I have a bunch of followers. And so they think I'm doing big things. Well, yeah, that'd be great. But it's extremely hard to go from 0 to 1,000 followers without anyone following you. It's almost impossible, right? Now, you could go follow a bunch of people and do kind of some tricky stuff, but typically the algorithms are not going to treat that as well, because what happens is you go start following a bunch of people, some of them follow you back, but they're not actually interested at all. And they're not actually watching or liking your content. And so the algorithm is dinging you and your content because the people who do follow you aren't engaging with it at all. As opposed to if you use your friends and family as that base, they will be watching and liking what you're doing. And the algorithm will treat you and will favor that and say, hey, this person's followers actually engage with them. And I'd rather have less followers that are engaged than more followers that are unengaged. And so does the algorithm. The algorithm would rather have you have less followers that are more engaged than more followers that are less engaged. And it's going to treat you accordingly. And the algorithm nowadays is extremely important, especially when it comes to, advertising with organic content. Very important. It can literally equal dollars in your pocket and huge differences in your conversion rates. I think another thing that kind of traps founders and keeps them standing still is testimonials, the lack of testimonials. And we did talk about this in the previous episode as well. Don't wait for testimonials. Get out there and get it to people and then ask them for testimonials. So really, it's not that complicated. Just make sure that in those first early sales, you just do whatever it takes to get those reviews. It doesn't matter if you have to give away free stuff. It doesn't matter if you have to call and email people over and over. It doesn't matter if you have to call in favors from your friends and family to purchase the product and then review it. At the end of the day, you do whatever it takes to get those first few testimonials, because testimonials are one of those things where once you get over that first hump of a couple of them, it'll all work itself out if you're doing things correctly. But it's not going to work if you don't get those first few, out of the way. So you just got to get those first few out of the way. And now you have some type of social proof. And that way you can actually go sell to customers easier. And then it will, it'll all come full circle, because eventually those real customers that you're getting are going to, start doing reviews and stuff as well. But it's always a great idea to have different systems to encourage people to give reviews and make sure you're doing a great job so that the reviews are good. Okay. So I think one of the things that a lot of entrepreneurs that we don't take responsibility for enough is, the doing everything ourselves, because I think a lot of people make the mistake of hiring people too fast or hiring people for something that they could be doing themselves. And so I think, hiring people before you really need to, it causes more confusion than it does clarity. And not only does it cause confusion for the business and the whole situation, but I think that also includes the entrepreneur. I think it confuses us as entrepreneurs to have somebody on staff to do something, but we're not really sure what the business is supposed to be doing yet. We're not really sure how the business works yet ourselves. And so putting another person into this mix really kind of jumbles things up. And here's the big thing. Once you bring an employee into your business, even just one, the game changes. You are now responsible for people, and that is the most difficult part of business. I don't care how much you like people. I don't care how much you enjoy people and working with people or managing people. It is extremely difficult. Human beings are all different, and we all are motivated differently. We respond to motivation differently. We all have different work ethics, different backgrounds, different morals. There's all kinds of differences with people. So the first person you bring into your business changes your entire mind state from being an entrepreneur and trying to get your business working to being a manager. And those are two completely different things. So we got to be very careful before we hire people. And I'm telling you that hiring people too early can give you a false sense of ego, thinking that you are a boss. That's a term people, I'm a boss. Well, being a boss isn't very fun. Let me tell you, when you're managing people, it's not very fun at all. And so, it's something where, don't get hyped up on wanting to have an employee, to have somebody do what you want them to do, because you don't want to do it. When you have an employee, you want to hire them to do things that you can't do, not the things that you don't want to do, the things that you can't do. So if it's something that you can't possibly do because you don't have the license or certificate or whatever's needed to do it, that's one thing. Or if you can't do it because you don't possibly have the time, and I don't mean you don't have the time because you go home and watch Netflix every night, so you don't have the time. I mean that there is zero time in your day, literally 0 minutes in order to do this, then hire someone to do it at that point. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs get a little bit hyped up about that. They hire people too early. It creates a lot of confusion. It also turns them into a manager when they should be a business owner and entrepreneur, still trying to get the business going and still trying to get it running. And they turn into a manager, and it just really goes. If you're a young entrepreneur, or whatever age entrepreneur, if you're a entrepreneur that's starting a new business, new service, new product, new venture, and you're shooting for the stars, and you're just making progress, and that's what you have to do. And then all of a sudden you're going like this, and then you say, oh, I want to hire somebody. Well, now, boom, all of a sudden you flatten out because you're spending your whole day managing people. Even if it's just one person, it's a whole different job. It's a whole different skill set. And so I'll tell you what, a lot of entrepreneurs are not good at managing people. Some are, and some aren't. Either way, it's a whole different skill set that you don't want to get into until you absolutely have to. And even once you have to, you want to make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Make sure you're hiring somebody who can do something that you can't, as opposed to somebody to do stuff that you just don't want to deal with, right? Don't be lazy, be practical, and make sure that you're hiring somebody for something that you either physically can't do, or that you just don't have the time to possibly do it. And as long as you're doing that, then hiring somebody won't be a burden necessarily. But I still recommend wait as long as humanly possible before you hire your first person. I think another thing that founders have a hard time taking responsibility for is having those hard conversations. So whether that's sales, again, this is kind of procrastinating things, right? So a lot of the times not selling and not asking for money is a big thing. These are the things that people don't want to do, right? People don't like sales. People don't like asking people for things and asking for money. These are the type of things where that's where the rubber hits the road. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't want to take responsibility for not selling enough, or not wanting to do those things, or pushing those things down the road, or procrastinating on those things. Same thing with getting feedback from customers, right? Actually picking up the phone, talking to people, getting the feedback. That's one of those things that people want to push off and procrastinate, or try to have somebody else do it. For example, just like I was talking about, if you hire somebody to do the things that you don't want to do, that's not necessarily where you want to be at. For example, you don't want to call your customers to get the feedback from them, so you hire somebody else to call them and get the feedback from them. That doesn't do you much good because you didn't get the feedback from them. They did. They talked to the person. Now, maybe you could listen to the recorded phone call, or maybe they took notes or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's not the same as you directly speaking to the customer, asking the questions that you want to ask, hearing how they actually answer them, talking to them. So again, don't push off those type of things. Don't procrastinate with those things that we don't want to do. And also don't hire somebody else to do those things just because you don't want to do them. You want to hire somebody to do the things that you can't do. And you want to do everything that you possibly can do yourself. You want to do yourself, especially in the early stages of your business. All right. With that being said, let's talk about Let's go ahead and get into some questions then before we wrap it up here then today. So because we do got some questions, we do stream this live on X and YouTube and Facebook and Twitch and Kick and all the different platforms. Feel free to drop any questions you have there live. I can answer them. You can also DM us any questions to @Kyle Hiersche or @FoundingWithoutFunding. Let's go ahead and get into some questions that I have here. Question from Eric is, how do you know when you're taking responsibility versus just beating yourself up? So how do you know whether you're taking responsibility or just beating yourself up? I think that's more of like an accountability thing, right? Like, you should be beating yourself up, if you're not taking accountability. I can't really tell you. I mean, you either know that you're doing the things you're supposed to or you're not. In my opinion, I think as an entrepreneur, we do know, even when we're beginners, in your heart whether you're doing what you're supposed to be doing or not. Those few things that are on your checklist or on your desk or in your email that you're not getting to because you don't want to deal with them, or they take a lot of brain power to deal with, or you got to make some hard phone calls to deal with them. So I think we all know that. So I don't think you should beat yourself up over things. Just be honest with yourself and know that, yeah, these are those things I've been procrastinating on. I need to take accountability for not doing that, and I need to take responsibility and make sure I get them done. Let's see. Melissa's asking, I catch myself blaming things outside of my control. How do you stop doing that? Yeah, so don't blame things that are outside of your control, but also don't try to make things that are in your control seem outside of your control. We talked about how some founders blame the economy. Oh, well, the economy's so bad. That's why we're doing bad. That's why our business is in this place, or that's why we have these issues going on. Well, every business is out there dealing with that same economy. And also, again, the economy is going to go up and down, and it's going to keep going up and down. So if your business is going to, crash every time the economy goes down, which who knows? I mean, some people say the economy is up right now, and some people say the economy is down. It depends on whether you're looking at the stock market or Main Street or Wall Street. All these things depend. So those are essentially kind of excuses, right? So if there is something that's truly out of your control, then don't dwell on it. You want to do everything that's within your control. But here's the key, and a mistake that I do see entrepreneurs make, and even I've made in the past, is trying to put things that are in your control out of your control, right? Trying to blame things that are in your control and trying to say, oh, that's not in my control. I can't help that. I can't do anything about that. Well, maybe it is not necessarily in your control, but how you react to that is absolutely in your control, and how you adapt to that and how you overcome the challenge that presents is absolutely in your hands. Okay, question from Chris. What's the hardest responsibility you had to accept as a founder? I think the hardest responsibility I've had to accept as a founder is that basically it's all on me. And really, I mean more so the money. I think the biggest factor in being an entrepreneur, and especially doing it in a founding without funding way where you're not relying on some outside investor to put all their money in, the biggest factor is your money, and the fact that you are the one that is responsible for it. If it's not successful and you can't pay the bills, the money's coming out of your pocket. That's the biggest key. Whose money is being used to pay the bills when the company doesn't make enough money? That's where the rubber meets the road. And as the entrepreneur, as the founder, as the business owner, it's your responsibility to make sure to pay the bills when the company can't pay the bills. And that's what's going to make you work hard. If you are working with people who have no finances on the line, naturally, they're not going to be working as hard, because at the end of the month, when the bills come and they're not responsible for them, it's not a big deal. But when the bills come at the end of the month and you're the one that has to pay them, then obviously it's a big deal to you. So you're going to be working your butt off the whole week to try to make sure that the company has enough money to pay the bills, as opposed to somebody who's not footing the bill is just going to, kind of keep trucking along. Right. So that makes a huge difference, is who is responsible for paying the price of the company not succeeding, which is always you, the entrepreneur. Let's see here. Question from Lauren. How do you take ownership when you genuinely don't know what to do next? So how do you take ownership when you genuinely don't know what to do next? If you genuinely don't know what to do next, then I would just research, right? I think it'd be as simple as that. Just make sure to do your research and to not just research outside, but research within. Some of the greatest things that have happened to my businesses is when we've done internal research, not saying, hey, I don't know what to do. Let's go look at other places or other companies or other things. We're saying, I don't know what to do about that. Let's study this more. Let's see more of the stats. Let's open up these folders and look at the details of each thing. Let's look at the sales. Where are they coming from? Let's look at the data of this. Let's look at if we approach this differently. Let's talk to the person that's in charge of this department and see if they have any ideas or insights and things like that. So to tell you the truth, way more comes from you, looking internally in your company and kind of doing research and figuring things out than looking elsewhere. So I would definitely, turn to the data within your company that you have and look at it and see if that's something that can help you find more clarity in what it is that you're looking to do or that you need to do or that you could do to improve your business. All right, we'll take one last question here. At what point should a founder stop waiting for help and just figure it out? So Daniel's asking, at what point should a founder stop waiting for help and figure it out? Immediately. Founding without funding, that's what this is all about. Don't ever wait for anyone. Don't wait for anyone. Don't wait for anything. Don't wait for an investor. Don't wait for funding. Don't wait for business partners if you don't have them already. Just do it. You can do it. You don't need anyone else, especially nowadays, for very cheaply or even free in some cases if you can sell before you buy. But if not, very cheaply, you can create a business from scratch and start making money without waiting for other people. That is what I love about today. With today's technology and tools and the way that the business landscape is, you do not have to wait on anyone to start your business. You do not have to rely on anyone else to grow your business. You yourself can launch a multi-million-dollar business, start to finish, just yourself, without outside funding, without outside help, and without relying on anyone else. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will catch you next time on the